to the Make, Share, Grow podcast. I'm artist Julie Marriott, and I created this podcast to share behind-the-scenes stories of art, craft, and the creative process. Hey guys, this week I'm chatting with painter Maya Bessette. Maya creates beautiful abstract landscapes, many of which are inspired by the nature around her home in Big Fork, Montana. I love how expansive and atmospheric Maya's paintings are. Some of them are more moody and mysterious, and others are bursting with light and color. And her joy and enthusiasm for art and creativity are totally contagious. You will love listening to her share about her inspiration and art process. While you're listening, go check out her work so you can get a better picture of what we're talking about. You can find her on Instagram at Maya Bessette Art. It's spelled MyABessetteArt. I know you're going to love hearing all about Maya's art, so let's go ahead and dive into our conversation. Hi, Maya. Thank you for coming onto the show with me.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I'm excited to talk about your artwork and hear more about your process. Your abstract paintings are so beautiful, and you have a couple different styles of abstract or techniques and things that I'm excited to talk about and hear the details of. Before we get started hearing about your process, could you tell me a little bit about your creative story, how you started making art, and how you came to be making the work that you're making today?
Yes, of course. So as a child, I was always just extremely creative, and somewhere along the line, and I think it was probably around that like awkward junior high age, I kind of just let it go, and it went away for a very long time. So I ended up working in the oil fields. So I kind of got my English major and decided, well, I've obviously got to go work in the oil fields now with that and just make a bunch of money. So I was up there for about 14 years, still hadn't picked up a paintbrush or anything like that. So when I got pregnant with my first child, you can't have babies in the oil fields, turns out. So I came home, and during nap times, I just decided I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see if there's anything still in there from that childhood creativity. And it started out just horribly. I will never share it. None of those early paintings will ever be seen, but I just kept at it. And the more I did, the better I thought that those paintings were getting. So I started a little Etsy shop, and I could seriously look back at that first Etsy painting that I sold and just cringe, but it sold, and it made me feel like, okay, there's a market for this. I'm just going to keep going. And never stopped. Second child, and I kept finding those nap times and those little moments when I could just get away, find an hour, and just get my paints out and go for it. And it's just been absolutely divine ever since.
That is so cool. Has it always been more on the abstract side, or what did you paint when you were first starting out?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I became very obsessed with impasto and just heavy texture. So it was fun. I mean, as awful as I think it is, those works were, looking back now, at the time, I was extremely excited to like take a spatula and a palette knife and just start smearing all this awesome acrylic medium all over canvases, and then come over the top later with different colors and washes. And so it was kind of a fun, it was very abstract and very much almost sculptural art at the very beginning. And then I just kind of slowly eased out of that, and my texture pieces sort of became more of like a crackle texture. And before long, I was finding myself a little bit more amused by the flow of water and of inks and things like that just don't really translate as well in those heavy texture pieces. So it was kind of a very natural genesis into this more flowing abstraction that I'm working in now.
Yeah, definitely. I know like some of your pieces when I first started following you, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 years. I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. It's been a while. We're definitely much thicker stroked, and now they've gotten a lot more fluid. And so it has been neat to see that sort of change go on, but it still definitely has like this atmospheric, sort of quasi landscape sort of a feel.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can talk more about materials and stuff in a minute. I would love to hear, do you have like a creative space that you regularly work in, or tell us about that? Like, how do you, what does your space look like?
Yes. Oh, I hope you can see it someday. Just so we can have a good laugh, because it is in my living room and sometimes it's in my dining room. So I basically have, this is like a make it work moment because I just don't have a room for a studio. So I have a couple of portable buffet tables that go with me from room to room and wherever I'm feeling inspired. If I want a lake view, I move it to where it is now, and I'm sitting here looking out over Flathead Lake. If I want a view of the Mission Mountains, I might be painting in the dining room. And so I'll lay out a big giant drop cloth and move the dining room table. And my poor family just has to adapt to wherever my art center is landed that day or that week or that month, depending on what kind of a series I'm working on. So yeah, it's a constantly transforming space. And my poor daughter, when we have friends over, she has to explain ahead of time that we're a family of artists. So don't expect it to look tidy because it's just never going to be. That said, my kids are welcome to grab a paintbrush whenever they feel like it. And I have extra canvases anytime. And so there's kind of that feeling of creativity in the space, but it by no means is the decorator's dreamland that I think I'd like to have someday.
That sounds so cool though, that you can like include your kids and they're old enough that they can sort of, be, how old are they?
That they can play, 7 and 8.
Yeah, that is awesome because my daughter still is at the point, she's 3, so she is a little bit dangerous to come wander in. Like, she's pretty well behaved, but sometimes she'll just be like, hand me that brush and give me some red paint. It's like, oh.
When they still kind of want to paint themselves more than they actually want to paint the canvas.
Yes, that definitely happened just the other day.
I remember. I really do.
Yeah. So, okay. So that sounds really like when you're having to move around, does that make beginning to create harder for you because there's like some setup involved?
It does. And I think you just nailed it. I think my dream is truly to have a space that is just mine and not as much for the setup as having to tear down, having guests over and having to, clean up my whole table situation and all of that. It would be wonderful to just have that space, that bright, light, airy space that is all mine. And my living room is bright and airy. It just also has couches and TVs and kids stuff in it, so in the future, absolutely my own private space would just be phenomenal. But for now, I do use it as kind of a gallery space too. So all my paintings, as they dry, they go up on the walls, and it's a happy place to be.
That's really cool. Yeah, that is thumbs up to you for being able to still create with all of the different, roadblocks and things that you have going on. Because that
the mayhem and the chaos.
Yeah, because that is so good. That would stop a lot of people. So that's so great that you're like pushing through and still making it work for you.
Thank you. Yes, always.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I am curious, what are your sort of main art materials and tools and things that you are using in your paintings right now?
Yes, I can just look around me right now. So one of the things that I'm completely obsessed with is my Catalyst wedge. Have you played with those yet?
I haven't, but I've had a couple other guests who use that. So I kind of researched them and saw, they're like those spatula sort of things.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of like
tell me about that.
So it just makes, you can make the finest lines with the Catalyst wedge, or you can move, like I'm actually doing it now, you can move the inks around in such a subtle way. So, so you're sort of manipulating the flow of ink or the flow of water without being as intentional as like a brush stroke would be, and without leaving that brush stroke look. So it's really like a big bendy palette knife for me, and I just have the most fun playing with it. So that's definitely one of my go-tos. I always keep that handy. And now I've moved away from just like the more hard palette knives, and I'm just kind of playing with some larger brushes. I definitely have this obsession with acrylic inks. Once I found acrylic inks, it was kind of a game changer for me because I've always loved that watercolory look, but I wasn't accomplishing it by, kind of getting those heavy body acrylics and adding a lot of water. These inks are so concentrated, and they're just they're absolutely a dream. So, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it on my Instagram feed where I kind of post those time-lapse videos of how that ink moves.
Yes.
It's just, and that's what kind of is my passion right now is basically trying to control that chaos of water drips and kind of, if I want it to be a canal or if I want it to be a distant landscape or distant horizon, kind of getting the inks to do what I want them to do. And then when they're not, and when they're just, when I'm getting frustrated, I might grab some heavy body white and basically make a dam, so you kind of get the idea where I'm mixing things that I don't know if they're supposed to be mixed, but they sure are fun. So I'm not going to stop,
Oh, that's so cool. Okay. So explain a little bit for people who haven't seen, like, what is your process with the acrylic inks?
Yeah.
How do you put them onto the canvas?
Yeah. How do you even apply them? There are so many different ways. So, I tried several things, and one thing that seems to really work for me is similar to a watercolor process where it's wet on wet. So I actually will wet the canvas in a way that I think I want the water and the inks to go. And then I will drip the ink directly onto the canvas and let it kind of sprawl out in that water puddle. That's one way that I can play with the inks without committing, because once that ink hits the canvas, a dry canvas, chances are it'll kind of stay that way. And I may not get the effect that I want. So that's, adding to water is one effect. Another thing that I play with is called Resist. And it's, if you've ever painted with watercolors, you definitely know what Watercolor Resist is. And it's basically kind of like a kid's rubber cement that you can put on your canvas and paint on top of it, do whatever you want, and then peel it off when you're done. And you've got this beautiful, strip of white that you can either leave untouched or do a different color. So, that's kind of where I'm taking the inks right now, is just playing with them in more of a watercolory way, but without that slow drying time that I just don't have the patience for.
Okay. So is that a difference between what would make acrylic inks unique? They dry faster?
They dry faster than a watercolor on watercolor paper would. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then of course I have my tools to deal with my lack of patience, like my hair dryer, and then paper towels are handy in case I apply too much ink and it's a little too concentrated in an area. But, so much of what I'm doing is really just experimenting on the canvas. Half of it works and the other half is absolute junk. So yeah. Go ahead.
Is it like something you can paint over, or do you have to trash it afterwards?
Yeah, no, it's just like acrylic. So if I'm really going for a watercolory look and I end up painting over it, I probably am not going to get that full watercolor vibe, but that's okay. And that's why I love acrylic. So acrylic ink is just like regular acrylics, but just very fluid. So once it dries, go right over the top of it if you want. That's totally fine. It mixes with all acrylic mediums, just like a heavy body acrylic would. So it's a fun thing to play with, and especially for acrylic artists to kind of mess with as a background. You could definitely do some washes and drips with it, and it'll dry and just like an acrylic. So yeah, highly recommended. And actually, from what I understand, acrylic inks are, they're kind of designed to, they're designed to be fluid, whereas adding water to a heavy body acrylic can sometimes cause cracking and flaking down the road, which is, obviously as an artist, like our worst fear is that we've sold a painting to someone that 3 years down the road is flaking,
Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. Okay. This is so new to me because I didn't even know that acrylic inks existed. I've heard of like inks and even like watercolor ink where it's like super concentrated watercolor. So that is fantastic. I need to get some. What kind of brand is it that you use?
So I've gone with several different brands. Liquitex has a great one, just Liquitex professional ink. And then I actually have tried several others, and I'm looking for them right now. Another one that I really like is FW by Daler Rowney. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I haven't really found any that I don't like, I guess. So if I did, I'll let you know. But for now, those are pretty fun to play with. And as I'm looking around, I'm also seeing some other things that I wanted to tell you about. And that obviously gold leaf. I always keep it handy.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I love playing with gold leaf, and I am definitely guilty of over gold leafing my pieces sometimes because I can't stop. You can gold leaf anything. I gold leafed a set of our glasses one time and got in trouble for that. I've gold leafed lamps, picture frames. Basically, anyone who can apply some glue and put a very thin sheet of gold leaf on something can play with gold leaf in their paintings. So you've seen my horizon lines might have a little sliver of gold leaf in them. It pairs extremely well with acrylics. You can paint over the top of it. You can apply it over the top of an existing painting. So it's just something that I just like to pepper in every once in a while in a collection.
Oh, that's beautiful. I know. I love that little shimmer you have on the horizon sometimes, and just like the little flecks of it, because like a little goes a long way, and I could totally see myself like overdoing it. And so it's because it sounds so much fun.
It is an absolute kick. And I use composition gold leaf, which is not 24 karat. So I don't have that fear of just wasting all kinds of money if it doesn't work out. And it still has that beautiful reflective effect, without having to be the 24 karat. So highly recommend it. Gold leaf. And like you said, just a little bit goes a long way. And I really had to learn that along the line, and trying to sell pieces that just weren't selling because half the darn painting was covered in gold, So, yeah.
That's too funny. Yeah. Okay. So you have your like acrylic pieces, or the fluid pieces that you're doing now. And then I know you I'm seeing some other pieces that, have the gold leaf that look a little bit more opaque, like they're more the thicker acrylics.
Yes.
Are you still doing those, or is that part of your work that you're still doing? They're beautiful, like clouds.
Yes, and of course I'm obsessed with clouds. I think you've been to Montana, so
Yeah.
the skies here are just, how can you not paint dramatic clouds often? So I'm always revisiting those heavy kind of heavy paint landscapes. They're just so calming to me. So I don't think those will ever go away for me. The look may or may not change a little bit along the line, but yeah, I do. I'll stay on a vein for a while, and right now I'm just really into these very fluid, almost watercolory looking pieces. And then, I swear my attention span is about a month to 2 months with any particular look. And then I've got to try something new. I went through alcohol inks phase, and then I'll probably come back to that too. But yeah, kind of always bouncing around and keeping it fresh and new, and then trying to always have that vein, that thing that kind of makes my art mine, which is that more kind of ethereal, like you said, atmospheric look where there's some white involved and there's some lightness to it. It doesn't feel heavy or moody.
Yeah, for sure. And they all feel like grounded in the landscape one way or another. Even if there are like really abstract, there still feels like there's, something nature based going on in your paintings.
Yes, absolutely. And I grew up in Alaska, right on the Pacific Ocean. So I had the benefit of having all of these memories along the shores of the Pacific. And then here I am in Big Fork, Montana, which is just, full of vistas of the Rocky Mountains and lakes and these beautiful pastures. And so, yeah, that is definitely my inspiration is the landscape all along. From time to time, I've tried to do like more forest, trees and things like that. And I just haven't had as much success with that as I have with these big, wide open landscapes. And so I just I think that's more my style and my vibe. But yeah, I mean, who knows? I would try anything. If the inspiration strikes, I'd kind of go anywhere with it. But for now, I really do love focusing on those far off horizon lines and those big, dramatic cloudscapes.
Yeah, I love those. They're so, like you said, wide open, and they definitely like speak of like just really, really open vistas, which I love. Yeah. They're beautiful. What are you thinking about when you start a piece? Do you have a picture in your mind of how you want it to go? I know with the inks, it doesn't sound like you have a lot of control at the beginning there.
Which is part of the beauty of it. No, I think I do. I think I try to have a bit of vision. And certainly with like obviously a color palette in mind. Maybe how I'd like that horizon line to look. Is it going to be kind of curved, or is it going to be, am I trying for some perspective in this piece? But like you said, oftentimes I'm overruled by my own painting, and those drips and the canals of water will create something very different than what I had originally started. So I try not to be too married to an idea that I, kind of, what do I say? Just kind of, I don't want to overrule the magic that's going on the canvas. So, in answer to your question, I think I do start out with a vision, and I bet you about 1% of the time does my painting ever turn out like my vision.
That is really cool though. Like, I love how you said there's like, you don't want to overrule the magic that's in the painting. Like, that's such a beautiful way of thinking of it, instead of wanting to, control. Cause I feel like I kind of err on the side of over control sometimes. Right, and I'm like trying to think of, how can I put more chance into this, or not even chance, but like experimentation, or something like that. So that's a really cool way of thinking about it.
It's true though, but that's been a process as well, because I am a bit of a control freak in my own right. And I think that over time I've allowed a little bit more, freedom on the canvas. But there were times, Julie, when I would paint over a canvas, there was one that I had 5 paint overs, complete and total paint overs, because it wasn't doing what I wanted. And then talk about a tortured end result. It didn't look inspired. It looked very forced, so it's like, I have to have those throwaway pieces and just know that, okay, I gave it all I had. This is never going to do what I want it to do. Start over, blank canvas.
Yeah, that's hard to give up on that.
It is, especially as an acrylic artist, right? Because we know we can paint over the top, but there comes a point when you've put too much paint on a canvas and you just have to walk away.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at some of your, the small, like little landscapes that have the gold leaf. And I'm like seeing lots and lots of layers. So not that I'm thinking you're painting over these necessarily, but they have so many beautiful sort of washes and layers, and some things like the ones that have green, some green landscape with the sky up in there. Are you doing like really thin layers of the regular, like heavy body acrylic paint, or how do you get so much like texture and sort of layering in those?
Yeah, totally good question. I those do have multiple layers, and that's pretty intentional. So usually, like I said, I try to start with some sort of a wash with the inks. And that's where I'm kind of finding out what kind of landscape this is going to be. And then from there, I might grab my catalyst tool and add a little bit of heavy body and try to kind of manipulate the foreground into something, or I might just be playing with the clouds. But yeah, in answer to your question, especially with my minis, I do quite a bit of heavier texture on those. And that's really just that formation of the clouds. I've seen watercolor artists, for example, who can get some depth with a single layer of watercolors. I am not that artist. I have to play with those clouds many times, come back for many sessions on each of those little minis, and to kind of tweak the clouds until they're doing what I want them to do. So those ones are definitely, they definitely take several sessions and several different layers to kind of get them to where I want them to be. But I actually love that part of the process too. I'm not frustrated along the way and doing total paint overs, but rather just little nuances and layers along the way. So, and then basically I might have 8, mini canvases, and mini meaning like 8x8s on my table at one time. And I'll paint a little bit on this one, set that aside, and come to another one, set that aside. And by the time I've sort of come back around, that one's dry and I can play with that a bit more. So that's been the way that I can keep kind of a nice, easy flow with my art, sessions. rather than having to sit there and watch paint dry, which just drives me absolutely nuts.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yes. I love having multiple minis going at the same time because then they kind of come out feeling cohesive, but each one is different because you kind of pay attention to each one individually, but you kind of can like spread the same color around on different ones. Yeah. That is really fun. Yeah. That's cool.
And you just touched on something I think is really important and something that I don't feel like I really was embracing until a couple years ago. And that is the idea of having a cohesive collection. I still considered myself such a learner. And I still am, but I think I considered myself very new until a few years ago when I looked back and went, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 9 years,
Oh, wow.
And so in that process, I realized that when you release a collection to a gallery or release a collection on your website, it really ought to have kind of a common theme or a vibe. And whether that's a color from your palette, or maybe that, that little vein of gold leaf, or maybe it's mostly clouds or mostly foregrounds. Point being, it is nice to the eye to see that thing that ties an entire collection together.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it definitely is a way, like creating a series of work is a way of working out, sort of an idea in, multiple slightly varied ways, but you're kind of focusing in on something that, is unifying them all. And you're kind of like spending some time with that idea for a while, which is really fun.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. So I am curious about what in your creative process, like what part of your process is the most fun for you? Where do you just sort of lose yourself the most in?
Oh yeah. It's easy because it's always at the very beginning. So, and as a mom, I think you'll get this part where you somehow manage to eke out enough time to paint. And you're guaranteed a certain amount of time. So when I have that and I've got all of my paint set out and I've got my canvases prepped and ready, I love that very beginning when I'm just diving into that painting, because there's probably an idea that I've been thinking about for days and knowing that I wouldn't get to it till this particular, moment in time when the kids were going to be at school or when I wasn't, doing my other job, my day job.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's that initial diving in and applying those first few drops of ink or those first few brush strokes and kind of mapping out that new piece. And also, kind of what you and I already touched on, which is letting that piece kind of reveal what it's going to be. And that, it gives me kind of a rush, every time that I kind of dive right in. So it's that very beginning part of the process when I have saved up so much creative energy and so many ideas and I just can't wait to get to the studio. And then I just let loose. And I don't even play music in the beginning because I'm embracing that silence so completely that I just kind of sink into that quiet. It's delightful.
That sounds so awesome. Yeah, I feel like that is really similar amongst a bunch of the artists that I've spoken to for the podcast, that the beginning is always sort of the place you can let go the most because it's the most like wide open of possibilities. And then as you move through the piece, it kind of becomes your like range of possibilities narrows and narrows and narrows until it's like, okay, we just need to like do the finishing touches and you have to be more meticulous about it.
You do, especially if you've fallen in love with some nuances of the piece, because how terrible to overwork something or to, or to ruin that one magical little special thing about that painting. So yes, you're absolutely right. I think that it is that freedom that we all seek anyway. It's just that, just free to roam, free to experiment and just play. I'm not surprised that it's the favorite of many other artists as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, when you're working on your pieces, like what are you thinking about? Do you have inspiration of some sort or a way that you gather ideas? Tell me about that a little bit. Like, do you get color swatches or photos or how does that work?
Yeah, it's, I wish I could just have like this one answer for this, but first of all, the place I live is pretty amazing. So I could easily just be driving to town in a place called Kalispell, across the top of the lake, look to my left and go, oh my gosh, the way that the sun is just barely peeking over those clouds. And there's, the mountains are kind of misty in the background. those moments happen all the time. And so those are like kind of mental snapshots that remind me, okay, I got to try to replicate something like that. I've got to put that out on canvas. So definitely happens almost daily, in that sense. But other times it is a photograph. I did an entire series last summer that was based on a photo that a tourist had taken, in the off season on the Ring Road in Iceland. And it was just a striking landscape. And it just took the breath right out of my lungs. And I just knew I had to paint. And I set up it was a dining room studio that time for an entire month, including I had my little, my photography bulbs, the umbrella bulbs, so I could paint at night.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I really wanted that early morning light this tourist had captured. I wanted to be painting in the early morning, which I'm usually not that kooky, but it just felt kind of right. So I was getting up early before the kids were out of bed and running out there. And I've never had a series go so smoothly and to the point where I just didn't want to stop. I knew that the gallery could only handle so many of my pieces. So I kind of, eventually let it die out. But it was this entire like icy, landscape collection. So yeah, so it could be anything from a photograph to something I see driving around to some weird combination of colors that I just see out and about. I mean, I don't even know. I can't even think of an example off the top of my head, but it is definitely just keeping my eyes open right here where I live that seems to provide ample inspiration.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. And I feel like you're inspiring me to look more carefully around where I live. And it's like, I live in San Diego. There's like definitely color, but we're definitely in the desert. So we're not having like beautiful, fantastic, like green vistas and stuff like that.
But I think my lucky stars all the time because it is so dramatic. Here we are, the Mission Mountains on one side. It's this little artistic hamlet. We've got rivers, we've got the lakes, so while we're pretty rural and we don't have access to some of the cool stuff that other people do, we certainly do have the great outdoors, and it's delightful for a landscape artist to live in a place like this. That said, I think you could pick me up and plop me anywhere and I would still have all these images, I just having been here, and just traveling. So yeah, it's pretty amazing to get to be in a place like this.
Oh, that's so fantastic. So I love hearing how different artists view the subject of their creative voice. Do you have any thoughts on how like you've developed or honed your creative voice and how you kind of have come to a place where like your work definitely, has sort of a common look to it, although there is a lot of variety. Right. Do you have any thoughts on that you could share?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think it's a struggle for anyone who's just picking up a paintbrush for the first time, especially people who are self-taught, who aren't kind of nurtured by trying all these mediums in school, let's say. For me, it had to be time. It had to be a million paintings that I absolutely couldn't stand and one that I could and finding out why. So I think that basically, eventually, through painting and trying and sort of looking at a piece and saying, oh, it's almost what I meant, almost, I got to the point where I could step back from a painting and say, that's it. That's what I meant to say right there. Now, I wouldn't say that still happens all the time. I think that probably the majority of my pieces are really, really close to what I meant to say. But every once in a while, and more often now than not, I'm finding that I can connect with that piece, like that I really feel like I'm expressing what I meant to. So basically the short answer is really just to keep painting every day. And I think your style emerges. I think it just comes out of nowhere. It's hard to tell someone that who's just starting out and really wants to do this for a living. But heck, start selling, and I know you don't want to go too much into selling, but try to sell some works, try to do a farmer's market or whatever. And over time, I think that people will see that, your own particular style coming out. So yeah, it's such a process, isn't it? That finding who you are and what you want to say.
Yeah. And I think definitely like what you said about like stepping back and really looking and analyzing, I think has helped me the most of like, instead of just forging on ahead and continuing like, yes, keep making, but like take the time to really look and see like where you missed the mark, where you wish you would have been different, and like intentionally trying, to be different as you move forward or to like work on those specific areas. Yeah, I think that's so important. And that's like, fantastic. That sounds really, really good. Like what you've been working on. And
it's fun too. And to kind of take that a step further, I don't know that I am an artist who can do the same, kind of the same signature look over and over again, just with different colors or, I definitely am a little bit, I definitely have to explore. So I try not to go too far away from my style when I do. But if you go back to my alcohol ink phase, I kind of took a little detour there. It didn't look like my work for a while because it was such a new medium, but I just had to try it. I just had to give it a shot. So, basically I think I'll always come right back around to a very similar, very light, ethereal, optimistic vibe. But I don't think it's such a bad thing either to take a mini detour from time to time and try something that's maybe not as much you, just to see, just try it on for size.
Yeah. Yeah. And that definitely like you have to keep things fresh for yourself or else it will just get stale and you won't even be wanting to make the work anymore. Exactly. Like I love following artists and seeing the different things that they try. So I think in a lot of ways, like that keeps the people who are watching your art really interested and curious about what you're working on.
Yes. Oh, definitely. I think, yeah. And if I'm conveying that passion and excitement, that almost childlike, excitement, then I think I'm doing my job just to kind of, to share. And I really hope that other artists, try some of the goofball things that I try. And, whether or not they're successful, it's still just fun to play. There's a kid in all of us that just wants to get messy.
I know. I need to get some of those inks. So what is the difference? Yes. What is the difference for you, from the alcohol inks and the acrylic inks? How do those work differently?
Oh, alcohol inks are the most maddening medium, but I highly recommend everyone try them. First of all, they don't act like normal ink. So they actually repel each other. So if I was to I could drop down a bright pink on what's called Yupo paper. I could drop down a bright pink alcohol ink and then right on top of it, drop a icy blue, and that icy blue will repel the pink away. And you'll have just icy blue in the middle of this big, puddle of pink. So it's just very much the opposite of what we're used to when it comes to like color theory and mixing. And you really can't mix too effectively with alcohol inks. So, maybe it is a good exercise for the inner artist control freak in all of us to give it a shot. Because I tried to manipulate with hair dryers and straws, and I got my brushes out and I tried to make it look like something that I wanted it to look like. And in the end, I think I just had to embrace that it was going to do whatever the heck it wanted to do. And the only control I had was over the palette.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yes, but it's super fun. And kids absolutely love alcohol inks. So I've done a few classes for kiddos, and I will continue to always do alcohol inks for kids because it just is such freedom for them to just get to play. And if you don't like something, you can drop a new color on top of it and it'll repel what you just did. So it's interesting and definitely worth trying. I don't know that it'll be my medium of choice, in the future, but definitely something that helps me loosen up.
That's so fascinating. Okay. What brand of alcohol inks do you use? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah. I want to say it's Tim Holtz, or is it Tom? No, it's Tim Holtz. Adirondack.
Okay, cool. We'll add all your material things to the show notes so everybody can find links for those.
Perfect. Yes. And those
awesome.
are available
I know.
in craft stores too. If you ever just wanted to give it a shot, they're not crazy expensive. So you could grab a little handful of them and try, but make sure you have Yupo paper.
Okay. So you need like the specific surface for them. Okay. Great to know. Yeah, thank you.
Super fun.
So I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, about like how you get ideas for a new series or something like that. But like, what do you think fundamentally like keeps you really interested in your work and like finding new avenues to pursue?
That is, and I feel like this is where Instagram comes in for me. This is where I found out about things like acrylic ink, or I found out about these different mediums. So generally when I get that, just, that fire, that passion, it's probably because I found something new to play with. Like I'm just such a little kid about it. But, with my catalyst, wedge, I just happened to see in the craft store one day and just wondered. And then, an entire series was born out of it, and I haven't put it down since. So I want to say that mediums and finding a new medium might be that thing that brings a little fire. One other thing that I might say would kind of keeps me coming back for more and gets me really excited would be just, a different perspective, a different take on a landscape. If I've been doing landscapes and really focusing on clouds for, many months, and I kind of have come to the end of that particular body of work, I might just get really excited about this idea of, hey, maybe I'd like to try rivers. Well, why don't I do some rivers? And then boom, I'm off and running again, so it could be the slightest little concept that then I've got to explore. And then I'm really looking at my own landscape wondering, okay, how do rivers act? How does water act? I've never really stopped to think about, what does a wave really do? Or what does it look like? Where are the shadows and how does light play on water? So then that's my new project, is researching how that might look, how other, artists have interpreted it and just kind of going from there. So I know I'm a little bit all over the map with this answer, but I think the answer is just, kind of taking in my environment and finding one little aspect that I just hadn't thought to play with before.
Yeah. I love that. And I love the idea of like trying new mediums and trying to like fit them in somehow to like what you're doing already. I am getting to the point where I think I need to like incorporate something new into my process. And I've been thinking about like oil pastels. Like I love seeing paintings that sort of have a drawing element to them too. So I'm like kind of pondering in my mind, like before I take the leap and go buy something, like, how would I do this? But maybe I just need to go get them.
I know. And I think, like it kind of bringing in what you just talked about, that kind of sketchy element, bringing in some sketch. Mm-hmm. I've tried it and it still is completely intriguing to me. I have never successfully, felt like I successfully mastered it, but I'm kind of like you in that sense that, boy, how fun would it be to kind of sketch on top of what I just did? Or just have those elements. So yeah, it sounds like you and I have a very similar kind of approach to finding that inspiration, or just, kind of getting excited about it. Is, gosh, what else can I do to make this special and mine and new and different? So my eyes are always wide open, and trust me, I can get lost in any art store, craft store, for this exact reason. What else can I do that's different, fun, and weird?
That's awesome. I know. I feel like it is dangerous walking into Dick Blick or whatever store it is that you have. It's like, ooh.
Oh, terrifying. Well, I didn't even know that was a thing, that you could walk into a Dick Blick store. It's not funny. It's like, it's online. It's a catalog, because I live in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, once I found out about that, the next time I'm in a city, you can just forget it. I'll be in there for an entire day. Just see you later.
The only thing that saves me from our local one is that they have the tiniest little downtown parking lot, and that is like a nightmare to get a parking space into. So that's the only thing that saves me from like,
I don't
going there all the time.
Don't need it that bad. I really don't.
So I'm going to move us into our final sort of 3 questions here. Would you mind sharing a recent struggle that you've had in your creative practice and a recent triumph? These could be big things, small things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think my recent struggle is probably not a whole lot different than what I've struggled with from day one. And that has just been finding the time. And I recently, and I kind of mentioned to you that my husband and I started a martial arts gym where we teach jujitsu to children and adults. And it was this massive leap of faith that we just went for it. And it has been a wonderful success and a beautiful, uplifting experience. But I am having a really hard time getting into the studio right now, and certainly having a hard time posting, because I'm just not in here enough. So it's an ongoing struggle, and I've got to figure it out. Either sleep less or something's got to give. Yeah, to try to just get back into the studio. That's when I'm doing my very best work, is when it's just really consistent. At least I'm doing a little bit every day. So right now I'm actually putting art time on my calendar, and it kind of makes me want to cry because it's very, we might be looking at 5 days out is going to be my next studio session, so that I just don't want to lose this creative momentum that I feel like I've had the last year or two. So I'm not giving up yet. I just want to make sure that I can keep this ball rolling.
Yeah, that's so good.
And give attention to our new business.
Yeah, that's so good to just like schedule a little block, because at least you have that coming.
Exactly. I know, you're right. It's this kind of carrot that's dangling, and it keeps me up and upbeat as well. But I want to get back to where I can at least do something small every day. That was when I felt like I was doing my very best work. So, and that might look like my photography umbrellas at 5 a.m. on the kitchen floor, and that's fine. I just need to make it happen.
And what would you say? Do you have any success things if you can think, and you could even think back a little bit if you haven't been able to make as consistently?
Yes. You know what? I can never sing Minted's praises enough. Minted.com and their, different online challenges. I feel like that's kind of launched me into a new realm as far as art licensing. And I think the most recent was, I think it was a 3rd place win in the Pottery Barn challenge. So that was just a big success for me, not just to be on a magazine, to be in a magazine or anything else, but to feel like, something that I created is going to be in people's homes. Maybe it's going to be in some kids' dorm rooms. It just was very validating, that it was good enough to kind of be on that bigger stage, that larger stage. So yeah, I definitely think that was a pretty big win for me.
Oh, that's so exciting. Okay, tell me a little bit about that, about the whole Minted thing, because I've heard about it, but I haven't really done enough research to figure out how it works. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. And I really want to sign up to be a Minted mentor, because I think when you just join Minted, it's kind of confusing. It can be confusing at first how that platform is done. So Minted is crowdsourced art. So that's why they have these, open challenges, and they'll kind of announce a challenge, and anyone can submit their work in a little 500 by 500 pixel submission. But what happens then is the rest of the world is welcome to vote on the pieces. And you can kind of have a little bit of hype around your piece, by posting on Facebook, hey, come check out my piece, tell me what you think. But in the end, it's really going to be the rest of the world that's going to either vote on what they like and what they would want to buy or not. So trust me, I've lost many. I've had zero, not great ratings on many of the pieces, but then I've had a few wins through Minted. And what happens then is they license your work from you, or in this case, Pottery Barn licenses this print that they can sell, for the next, I think it's a couple of years in their stores and online. And then it's through that licensing, there's a small residual income for the artist. So you're definitely not, I wouldn't say you'd be in it for the money by any means. But it's just kind of fun to put your work out there and see what people think. Some of my very favorite pieces have had terrible ratings. But then some of them, some ones that I loved have also done well. So I just think it's neat, and it's very, it takes a lot of courage to kind of put you're kind of putting your guts out there, and just seeing what people think. Obviously when it's a positive result, it does feel pretty good. And I can do it all from the comfort of my home. I don't have to be sitting out there being judged in sort of an open forum. So yeah, I highly recommend it for anybody who's creating some, pretty modern, I use the word modern, just contemporary art, who would like to see what the licensing world is about.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, I will have to check that out. Absolutely. And if you're already making work consistently, why not? That all you have to do is submit an image.
Exactly, that's it. And as long as you can just get some nice high res photographs of your work, then you're pretty set to go.
That's awesome. And okay, one other thing that I'm curious about is you mentioned being working with a gallery. Is that local to you, in town, or?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I've had a couple other guests who have done stuff with galleries, and I'm always really curious to hear how your experience has gone and Absolutely. How you made that connection.
Absolutely. Yes. So the gallery, I call it my home gallery, is Persimmon Gallery here in Big Fork. And I feel like they gave me my start. It was many years ago when I was still kind of in that, mom at home, wasn't really getting out a whole lot mode. And I just walked in there with a few pieces one day and they said yes. So they have been my home gallery ever since. I do shows there from time to time. And it's just this wonderful, community of women, who just support each other. And, so the gallery world for me is just a way to kind of get my name out there, get my work out there, and just kind of be part of the community. Obviously you have to be prepared to pay a commission. There's a commission involved with any kind of gallery work, but it's also another way for me to do really some of my larger pieces where I don't have to worry about the shipping costs, which can usually cost more than the painting itself. So I can go pretty big in gallery work. And then, just kind of connecting with the community. The collection that I was telling you about was for a gallery in a neighboring town called Whitefish. And that was just a gallery who had heard from me from Persimmon Gallery. So just kind of sharing the love and doing some shows up in that neck of the woods as well. But yeah, and I recommend it for anybody who just, is selling their work online and just wants to make that little bit of a connection with their audience. It's not for everybody, but certainly I just think it's worth a shot if you have a smaller, hometown gallery, just to kind of start there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I think it's a really cool way. Like you can actually go in and like hear what people are saying about your work or whatnot, instead of I feel like online, all you have is that like little comment box when they check out, right, if they choose to like type something in there.
Exactly right.
And then it's like, oh, okay.
That's right. And I galleries are somewhere in between for me because I also tried the festival scene. Yes, I did that for a summer and I am not convinced that that's for me. I definitely met some amazing people. I wouldn't give those people up for the world. But it is talk about being vulnerable. You're in the 85-degree heat with all of your precious works, and people really have no problem telling you just what they think. A lot of times it's good, and every once in a while it's not. And you just have to really get that thick, that really thick artist skin, and just know that your work is not going to be for everybody. How could it possibly be? But with a gallery, I feel like it's somewhere in between. There's your work live and on a wall, but you're not necessarily standing next to it, hearing what people have to say constantly. I don't know how. Yeah. I don't know if that would be too defeating or maybe the opposite. But yeah, I think it's kind of a nice happy medium to at least have a presence in a gallery.
Yeah. Do the gallery owners give you like feedback or help you know like what they would like more of, or do you get any like information on that front?
Yes, definitely. In fact, I love Persimmon for this. They'll actually jump on my Instagram feed and say, excuse us, where are those minis? We'd like to have some, so they're kind of watching in that way. But yeah, they're really good about, definitely giving feedback, but in a very positive and constructive way. I've had a few pieces up on their walls, and one of them was just enormous. And I don't even know how they made room for it, but they did. And it was up for, probably almost 2 years. And finally, we all just kind of looked at each other and I go, give it back. I'm going to paint over it. It's done. So we kind of gave it a shot like that. So, and they understood. They're just delightful. And I don't know that, I just don't know that I'd be where I was now if it wasn't for those ladies at Persimmon just giving me the feedback, giving me, kind of the thumbs up that, hey, what you're doing is legit. You're like, go ahead and call yourself an artist because this is good stuff. So those are pretty precious relationships, I think.
Oh, that's so fantastic. I have heard like great things about being part of galleries. Like yours sounds like a dream. And then I've heard like a little bit of scarier things, like not going so well. And so I'm kind of like, I need to like find myself some really good people.
The thing too. I know I would not feel comfortable walking to sort of some of those more stuffy feeling galleries. I think I just walk right back out the front door. But yeah, when you find the right one and it's run by the right people, it can have that kind of more playful, fun vibe. And this particular gallery is owned by the artists themselves. I mean, their work is in there as well, and they're experimenting and being playful. So, and that's probably why it's my favorite gallery in the area, because it is playful and it's a little bit more contemporary and fresh. And we get together for, around the Christmas season and have a little, we do art walks and those sort of things. So yeah, definitely recommended if you're kind of ready for the next step in your journey. Why not give it a shot? You're going to give up a good, 40% to 50% of your, income to that commission, but it's kind of worth it to have your name out there and your work on the wall. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so that kind of moves us into my next question. If you could own a piece of art by any contemporary artist or maker, who would you choose?
Oh, I love this question, because how do you choose? There's so much good stuff out there.
Well, you could always give me like a couple, because this is more of just a reason to get some like new artist leads.
Yes, totally. Okay. One that I loved from the moment I saw her work, her name is Gretchen Worsen. Have you heard of Toddy Pond Designs? Mm-mm. Check her out. It is very abstract and very fun. She has got such a way with like creating these little puddles of abstraction, and what you and I just talked about, kind of bringing in that drawing and sketching element into her paintings. And what I really dig about her is that she's right-handed in real life, but what she paints and draws with her left hand.
What?
I know. Check her out. So, and I think her Instagram handle is Toddy Pond. I believe it's Toddy Pond Designs.
Okay,
and
cool.
It's TODDY. She is phenomenal. She creates these little worlds inside of worlds on her canvas. So I can get lost in her work.
Ooh, that sounds fantastic. Okay, I will link to her too in the show notes. That's so cool. Yes. I love finding out about new artists and I feel like actually the number of abstract artists I follow is like growing and growing. I used to follow like only people who painted flowers like me. And now
yes,
I'm like
of course. I get
branching out. Because I think we kind of start by following people who like inspire us to do what we're doing. And then once you kind of get more confident in what you're doing, you're like, okay, like I'll go look at some other people.
That's exactly right. I think at the beginning, I probably followed a ton of landscape artists, and now they've sort of found my own voice. Now I'm more drawn to these people who do something so very different from anything I've done or will ever do. Just because I'm like, oh my gosh, look what she's doing. And where did she come up with this stuff? And yeah, I think that's an absolute blast. I'm going to throw out another one she's a bigger name. She's in sort of, I think Greg Irby Gallery, maybe, and Art and Light Gallery, but it's Eva Mcgill Oliver. And she's been playing a lot with, collage, in her works, and kind of almost 3D looking collage, but her use of, she creates these amazing botanicals. Her use of color has always knocked me out, but now that she's doing all this fun collage stuff, I'm pretty captivated by that.
So I think I just started following her. Yes. I recognize like what you're saying about like the chunky sort of collage, which is so fun.
It is so fun. It's super fresh. And I would just fill a gallery wall with her work if I could. So yeah, she's a really neat one. And finally, I just will throw one more because I think she's absolutely delightful. She's an artist that I met through Minted. Her name is Karen Cardosky. And she is a photographer, and she does a lot of design and plays with Photoshop, I believe. But then she's also doing some cool sketches on top of her photographs. So she's doing some really beautiful, very elegant and ethereal work. I've told her this too. I think our work kind of pairs well together because we both have this sort of, there's sort of this airy, feathery lightness in her work as well. So that's another one I had to throw at you, and I'll stop, I promise.
Ooh, that sounds so intriguing. I will go check her out. That's awesome. Is there, as we kind of wrap it up here, is there anything that you're currently working on that we could go look at, or anything that you want to share or promote? I know you said you're in a little bit of a quieter period now.
Oh gosh. Yes. No, I mean, I have a show, I believe it's the first weekend in June, or first Thursday in June, up in Whitefish at the, Stephen Isley Gallery. And that's just the Whitefish has an art walk. So that's kind of the only thing that I can commit to right now. So nothing super huge other than that. But yes, please check out my Instagram feed, because I'm just going to be playing with a ton of those inks and trying to grab as many videos of the time lapse as possible. I sort of, I kind of went through a watercolor phase. And so that's kind of when I got my resist, my watercolor resist. And then I decided, okay, watercolors are not for me. The drying time is too long. So I gave my resist and all my watercolors to my mom. Well, I just stole back up to her house the other day and stole my resist back. So now I'm kind of jumping back into resist on canvas with acrylics. So I think that's going to be the vibe of this next collection. Very watery, very kind of hinting at some faraway, distant shores. And I'm going to kind of go with this vibe for a little while, because I'm enjoying that quite a bit.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, I can't wait to see what you share and post. I love your time-lapse videos. I find like art creation videos are like universally loved. Like every time I post something,
Absolutely.
People love those things, and they're like, oh, it's so relaxing to watch. I'm like, oh, really? I'm just kind of doing my thing. And I know they've said the same thing about yours.
Yes. And I love watching your stuff. Exactly. There's something about getting to see, especially if you can do a start to finish, which I don't know if I've successfully done yet. There is something so gratifying about watching someone else do, something magical and creative. I also really, really enjoy sharing with people what it is I'm doing. So if I'm not doing a good job of that in my posts anytime, I hope people will let me know, but I want them to know what is the medium I'm using. What did I just spray on my canvas? How am I getting this effect? I love this kind of open source arting, open source creating, where, I'm not trying to keep any secrets from anybody, because I really want people to be able to try this out. It's, again, tapping into that little playful 7-year-old who just wanted art buddies to do art with her all day. I'm kind of still that person that I just want everyone to play along with me. So anytime people have questions, I hope they'll ask me, hey, what'd you just use there? Or, why is the ink not sticking to that spot? Well, that's watercolor resist, or whatever. So I'm always trying to kind of share what I've got going on or what I'm trying out anyway.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love how open and how like sharing you are. That's just so refreshing and awesome. And I think I found a lot of like beginning artists come onto Instagram and are really curious about what we're doing and like what the materials are so that they can start out. So that's fantastic.
Yes, definitely.
Yay.
When you're doing it too, you're teaching classes and doing the whole deal, right?
Yeah, I am teaching workshops, and someday I've been getting lots and lots of requests for like an online class of some sort. So that I'm like mulling that around in my mind, but I know like how we said before we started recording, like too many projects, like we want to take on way too many things that are realistic.
For a webinar, when are you going to do a webinar? And I'm thinking, I don't even know how in the world to do a webinar. How about a YouTube video? Anybody good for that? Let's just do that.
Oh yeah, totally do that. Start small. I found like I have started doing videos for my newsletter, like just short, videos of me painting that are specifically for my newsletter subscribers. And even that has been like really helping me hone like my workflow for like doing video and all of that stuff. So even coming up with some little regular way of working on a skill will like help you get better over time.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I could not agree more. Just getting in there and getting dirty.
Yes. Well, Maya, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure hearing about your process and your art and your joy of creating. I just love it. And I'm so excited that we finally got to talk in real life instead of on Instagram.
Exactly right. Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. And I just can't wait to hear the podcast this season. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you again, Maya, for sharing with us today. Maya's website and all of the art materials, resources, and artists we mention on the episode are linked in the show notes at juliemarriottart.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening today, you guys. If you have been enjoying the show, would you please take a minute to leave a rating and review on iTunes? It's really easy if within the iTunes app, you just scroll down my podcast feed till you find the big rate and review button and leave a quick review and rating. That really helps other people be able to find it more easily in the search. Also, do you have any other artists and creative friends who might enjoy the show? I would love if you would share it with them by word of mouth, or sharing an episode with them directly, or even just tagging them on one of my podcast posts on Instagram. I would just really love to reach as many fellow creatives as possible and encourage and inspire them through what we're sharing here. So until next time, guys, I hope you'll continue in your own unique way to make, share, and grow. Thanks for listening to Make, Share, Grow. You can keep up with the podcast and my artwork on my website, juliemarriottart.com, and on Instagram at juliemarriottart.